be presenting on universal design and anti-bias teaching practices to create inclusive classrooms. So to start off, we're going to talk about what universal design is and then what that looks like in the learning environment. So universal design is when you design a physical environment to be accessible for all, no matter the disability or condition someone has. And then taking it universal design for learning, you're taking what universal design has already done by making an environment accessible to all and applying it to learning. So UDL is a framework that helps support diversity and inclusion for students by designing a learning environment that suits all students. This can include all diverse learners, such as those with learning disabilities and anyone else who falls under the diverse learning category. The main goal of UDL is to provide equal education opportunities and encouraging representation, expression, engagement of all students. The UDL framework is made up of 3 main principles. Those include representation, expression and action, and engagement. So looking into representation, that's more of like the what of learning. So the perception, language, symbols, and comprehension used. Expression and action is the how of learning, which is like physical action, communication, and executive functions. And then engagement is the why of learning, which is the interest, effort and persistence, and self-regulation. And then we're going to dive into each one just a little bit more. So with representation, educators are using different ways to represent the knowledge to students by addressing potential physical, cognitive barriers that students may have, which can look like using visual materials, auditory text, and digital reading materials just to make learning more inclusive for everyone. And then we have expression and action. With this one, it emphasizes the ability of students to plan, strategize, and demonstrate their learning, and allowing this to be creative and letting it look differently for each student. So as long as the students are showing that they understand the knowledge, their thinking is organized, and it's in line and in context with everything, then the way they express and portray their learning, it doesn't matter as long as it falls within those key points. Looking at engagement, so this concentrates on the student's participation in the learning process. So you're looking at what motivates students, what interests students, and then self-regulation within the classroom. So making sure we are finding ways to teach to help motivate, create interest and self-regulation within those students. And then this is an overview chart of everything we just went into. It kind of dives deeper into the learning guidelines of engagement. So you have, like, for engagement, the recruiting of interest, the sustaining effort and persistence, self-regulation, and representation. You have perception, language and symbols, comprehension, and then action and expression. You have physical action, expression, and communication, and executive functions, and then the guidelines under all of those. So why is universal design of learning needed? So this could be universal design for learning could be used for students that are neurodiverse. It could be used for virtual learning now that just the aftermath of COVID, and even when kids or students get COVID now, I guess it's changed since you don't have to quarantine anymore for it. But just in case they have to be virtually online, so just taking that into consideration when teaching. If students are in college or at the graduate level and they're adult learners, diverse, or like supporting the diverse learning of like maybe you have to take care of a family, or you commute, or you're working while you're in school, making sure the design for learning is appropriate for these individuals as well. So now we're going to move on to what anti-bias teaching is. And this is when you use culturally responsive teaching practices, which can be cultural competence, cultural humility, learned experiences, anti-racist approaches, and critical views of whiteness. In order to provide equal care for all students in their home lives, and also to stand up for the injustices in the school environment within policy and curriculum. Anti-bias teaching continued. So the anti-racist approaches require unlearning of the normative stereotypes and ideologies of others, and this can be based on race, class, language, gender, ability, and sexuality. And educators must be aware of their implicit biases and how these biases can impact their interactions with students as well as their teaching styles. So the goals for anti-bias education, they include using an active activist approach by challenging the prejudice, stereotyping, and biases within teaching. And there's 4 goals that go into education and teaching, and these include all students demonstrating self-awareness, confidence, family pride, and positive social identities. Number 2, all students will express comfort and joy within human diversity, accurate language for human differences, and deep, caring human connections. Number 3, all students will increasingly recognize unfairness, have language to describe unfairness, and understand that unfairness hurts. And then number 4 is all students will demonstrate empowerment and the skills to act with others or alone against prejudice and discriminatory actions. One theory that is really good for recognizing and helping fight or helping with anti-bias teaching is the critical race theory. So CRT is rooted in critical legal studies, and it's utilized within the field of education. So it's an approach that's concerned with the questions of oppression, inequality, and other social dilemmas within education. It emphasizes understanding on structural racism that education creates or maintains inequality, and how to go from being unequal, and unjust to a transformative change within the policy of programming and practices within teachers and the curriculum. CRT is the normalcy and the saturation of implicit biases in current education and culture. So, how to teach without anti-bias? Examining one's self-awareness pertaining to racism and biases within themselves and the educational system is really important. So having teachers increase their awareness of their own implicit biases and how their biases may impact the way they treat students or the way they teach students. It requires showing sensitivity by being responsive to students, their academic needs, and their social emotional needs, like home life and just life in general, making sure we're giving equal treatment to all students. Use of instructional techniques such as facilitating metacognition, problem solving, higher level thinking in all students, instead of choosing specific students of race, gender, whatever it is, and thinking that they will do better versus those of the opposite race, gender, etc. So here's a little chart of ways we can educate teachers on anti-bias teaching. So we can start with multicultural teacher training preparation. We just learned in one of our classes the difference between cultural competence and how that's just more of an understanding and a knowledge versus cultural humility, where you're actually practicing what you're learning and not just learning it, but you're putting it into practice. Providing opportunities for reflection and discussion about cultural diversity with an experiential component. So it's not just, like it says, a reflection or discussion, but you're actually going out and hands-on learning and everything. Then you have teacher education programs grounded in social justice principles and providing implicit bias training for the teachers. The class I said that universal design for learning and anti-bias teaching would be good for would be OTD 5250, which is anatomy. This class, there's a lot of information that us as students have to learn, and I feel that providing a class that incorporates universal design for learning, such as lectures, hands-on learning, trial and error learning, use of videos, all different kinds of learning to help students best understand the material. And then I said for homework, offering an array of options such as videos, coloring books, flashcards, or hands-on learning as tools to study versus making students only do homework one way. I feel like that puts a dilemma on students just because we all have different learning styles. So I believe that helped. And then for the anti-bias teaching, I said that this is important for anatomy class because based on like student success, I remember in anatomy class, like I feel like sometimes it was said that if a student didn't come in with a kinesiology degree, or if they didn't come in with exercise science, that the teacher may think that they're not going to do as well in the class. So just making sure we minimize anti-bias by not judging a student's success based on their race, ethnicity, home life, undergrad degree, how many years they've been out of school before OTD school, and then just making sure we're treating all students equal, answering all questions and not blowing off questions that certain students have. But yeah, and that is my PowerPoint.